Good morning. My name is Shay. I am the resident philosopher for, this event. I specialize in Native American philosophy, feminist epistemology, feminist ethics, social political philosophy, philosophy of embodied cognition, and philosophy of dance. Um, I am the chair of the International Association for Feminist Ethics and Social Theory, and I was recently the Carnegie and Rockefeller Distinguished Creative Scholar. I am also a founding board member for Tenure for the Common Good, which advocates for adjuncts and contingent faculty members. In addition to my articles, I have 4 books that are all interwoven with the themes of the Symposium. I have a theory of feminist freedom, feminism and the social contract, existential eroticism, women's oppression perpetuating choices, the phenomenology of a performative knowledge system, dancing with Native American philosophy, and my current book, Choreography as Embodied Critical Inquiry, Embodied Cognition, and Creative Movement. I also engage in a lot of mentoring for the UNCF Mellon program and am happy to be here. In Everything About Me Was Magic, The Black-Fleshed and the Making and Management of Modernities, Vincent Wimbush curates an exposition of the role of psychopolitics in processes of scripturalization as those emergent of practices, metaphysical and metaphorical, of masquerade and veiling. To scripture, as it were, is to frame, and to scripturalize is to fabricate the very frame itself through sociocultural historical dynamics. To do so, he butchers his distinguishing analysis of storied life of freed slave Gustavus Vasa with an attendant feast of artifacts that signify the role of black flesh in the production and maintenance of hierarchical racializations. Specifically, they invite us to think deeply about whether and how black flesh operates as a metonymy for modernity, as such, qua identity. A small point Wimbush makes that I want to think more deeply about is his reference to flesh and racial signification. They say, black flesh could not possibly be left to be what it was, simple difference. It had to be made readable, had to be made into a text that could be controlled, heavily signified. Herein was found the way forward, to make blackness a supercharged, hyper-signified reality, and in every respect and lack, the limit of the limit. Thus, a text read and violently writ up that helped construct whiteness in the world of reality whiteness claims to have built. The scriptural is fraught shorthand, all that which in the world is naturalized and taken for granted. This claim is related to the metaphysical construction of race from a realist ontological perspective. This position holds that race is equally socially constructed and real. That is, race was invented as an idea. It was attributed to bodies qua material substratum, and thereby solidified and codified through social practices and discourses to such an extent that the ontological realness of race could no longer be fiction nor fantasy. The swift transition from race from idea to ideology, carried along and through and on by bodies of difference, became real, very, very real, in material politics, material science, material morality, and material deprivation. What is metaphysically interesting about the social construction of race, which was engineered for the purposes of justifying colonialist ventures, is the variations and contradictions in its discursive processes. Through racializing flesh of a different color to that of flesh by a different name, colonial powers, and especially the well-compensated philosophers, found a means to paint a body with more than difference. This additional layer of ideology of sin and defectiveness constituted, as Wimbush says, a hyper-signification insofar as the racialized body said more, politically and morally speaking, than that of a non-racialized body. And all racialized bodies were hypersignified through the same ideology and for the same reasons. This brings me to the interesting and curious component. In order to justify the various colonial and slave practices and imperial investments, the ideology of sin and defectiveness, as I am referring to it, was applied equally, but communicated different requirements for racialization. The version to justify slavery was the idea of persisting blackness that is definitively undilutable. In order to assure the maintenance of slaves and an increase in their numbers, the ontological realness of blackness had to be defined according to the one-drop rule, such that any miscegenation between black flesh and the flesh of any other racialized or non-racialized body yielded more black flesh. However, in order to ensure the complete eradication of Native North American Indians and indigenous bodies, the ideology of sin and defectiveness stipulated that any miscegenation with red-fleshed bodies, except with black-fleshed bodies, slowly wiped away their existence. The need for land was the priority for this necessitated different kind of genocide, one of dissolution or at least disappearance through what I call a 100-drop rule, such that any introduction of differently and non-racialized flesh rubbed off on, and so rubbed out, red flesh. Ironically, the scripturalization of hyper-signified racialized flesh to establish modernity as such required paradoxical, almost opposing scriptural eclectics. The second idea Wimbush extends that merits philosophical reflection is to see within the evolution of masking as survival a masking to play. I recognize here 4 stages of scriptural eclectics. The first relates to the initial fostering of the mask qua hypersignification onto black flesh, a coercive infliction of masquerade. Over much time, a second stage emerges, which is one fleshed out by Fanon. This is the stage of internalization. For many cultures, masking in dance and in ritual is seen as an ontologically real transformation into the spirit of the persona of, within, and upon the mask. To bear the mask is to internalize and bear the spirit within and upon oneself. Much the same can be said about the internalization of the scripturalizing of black flesh within modernity. Here, individuals internalize the scriptures and tropes about their flesh and regard them more as character flaws than as signals of systemic repression. And there is a call for recognition in the way of assimilation, in a mask that is bargaining with the scripture of modernity. Unfortunately and inevitably, mask manifestation drives individually perceived psychoses and neuroses, following both Fanon and Bartke. But neuroses is a mask that scrapes, which leads to the third stage of recognition of assimilative ill-fit and potential of removal. The third stage is an in-between stage, within which many are transitioning into and out of. The recognition of ill-fit engenders a process of demystification. Subsequently, those who are hypersignified under and within the scriptures of modernity thrust themselves into the scriptural eclectics itself. But this interception and intervention is more than physical struggle for psychological liberation. It is indeed a moral struggle. Many virtue ethicists have argued that the virtues of the oppressed are burdened. That is, what makes for a necessary character under conditions of oppression are not the same character traits that lead to flourishing. Many oppressed individuals who seek liberation from the supposed naturalization of race must cultivate the burdened virtues of anger, resilience, solitude, and detachment to existence and resist under violent conditions. Thus, in this way, the stage is one of a rewhittling of the mask itself and a rejection of recognition politics. This transition stage is a masking game of transition, one that Wimbush gestures towards. The cultivation of the burdened virtues is, as he explains, a sharp, persistent, even if disturbing and painful self-reflexivity toward addressing what matters or is always at stake: brokenness of spirit, of bodies, slippage of categories, of systems, of identity as a type of poignant tragedy, not as romance of resistance overcoming. The fourth stage is one we're transitioning into today. This is a new masquerade of the kind of passion and creative forces Wimbush prescribes. It is a presentation and revolution of the reformed mask. Wimbush states, and I believe Jackie included this yesterday, which made me pleased. But the surprising and inspiring survival of such folk means that their tactics, their orientation, play, gestures, surrounding, all should be watched and studied carefully by all. In their very survival, there may be opportunities for all, if not to throw off all the mask, at least to see through their experience and gestures, to gain heightened self-awareness of the masquerade that defines all human foibles and strivings in the world after contact with difference. This new unveiling of a veil lies in and through the power of social media and all of its creative and participatory apertures. From this reformation born of creativity is a moral renewal from an epistemic liberation grounded in the ability to see through, to see into, and to see differently. These are the masking games anew. It is not an embracing of the mask that was indicative of the move towards recognition. It is an embracing of difference differentiated. This is a stage of scriptural eclectics as descripturalization through rescripturalization. Social media seems to be following folks to pursue social justice through praxes of epistemic justice that close the hermeneutical gaps forced open, and locked down for so long by the sheer force of the scripturalization of naturalized Black flesh in modernity. Thusly and philosophically, we can identify the four-stage scriptural eclectics of masquerade as rejection, resignification, refusal, and resignification. I hope people will find these stages of philosophically interesting consideration, and I look forward to hearing your comments and responses. Thank you.